Hey, Steve, how are you today? Fine. When y'all giving, Frankie your camp? Alright, so I got, Law called me yesterday, vacation, asked me if I would forge his signature, because he was. Well, tell him to go ahead and forge it, but Law's not gonna be back, his wife is sick. Not at the time. Yeah, she's back home, but she's in bed, and I home. It's always great to see when you're not home. Tell you make sure the forge is wrong. All right, thanks.
Everything good? That's part of the plan.
Yeah. Vera wants me to send her a copy. Of the final.
Oh. Five, four, right?
Yes, it is.
All right, so you need to take these and get Jill to sign.
Okay.
And then when you get them back to me, or we could just forge Kathy's signature today. Cause you gotta get these back to Julie, so Dr. Bull.
Realize we're not needed.
All right, feel ready to go. Well, look at there. Can y'all hear us? Good morning. Everybody can hear? Great.
Yes.
All right. So Dr. Payne's just connecting to make sure I get out of the video here. Vera?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd like to see your face.
Okay.
That's important.
I don't know if y'all want to see this face.
It's hard to get me out of the video. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. This is Vera Woolard's final dissertation defense. The process this morning is Vera will do her presentation, and then the committee, any questions, suggestions, revisions, and then we'll excuse everybody except for the committee, and Vera will step out and we'll do our deliberation. So without further ado, Vera Woolard, Growing Sustainable Quality DLI Programs, the impact of key leadership preparation, training, and support.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. Let's go ahead and get started. You wanna move?
Let's see. Always problems. All right. So we can get it to advance. There it goes.
Okay, so we're going to do a quick overview of chapters 1 through 3, which was our time together for the proposed defense. So again, next to teacher efficacy, school leadership is the second most influential element when it comes to student achievement and motivation. And so just a quick background, again, there are about approximately 234 DLI programs within North Carolina. That has increased over the last 2 years by about 94 programs, and it's still growing. Again, there is an unprecedented growth within the program, and so therefore program sustainability does require a multi-pronged approach. And again, the purpose of dual language immersion programs is to increase student achievement due to an effective bilingual education instructional model. And so when we think about the purpose of this study, it was to explore the leadership practices and behaviors, as well as the external, internal, and the professional development that is needed for principals that is paramount for them to lead and maintain those quality schools and programs. And so again, Part of the problem is there is not a university or coursework currently that has been set out for principals who are looking to run such programs. And so therefore your principals will not be aware of sometimes the curriculum, the pedagogy, or even what is needed for teacher qualifications for leading such classroom environments. Again, the lack of specialized training does threaten administrators staying within those types of schools. There is a lack of funding, sometimes even the qualified teachers these days. And again, PD for both teachers and the principal. And so again, this study was to help explore what are those essential behaviors, practices, again, the external, internal supports, as well as that specialized PD to help them handle those complex difficulties that come with leading a dual immersion program. So here are the 3 questions that guided the inquiry of this study. And so again, what are the specific leadership behaviors and practices that these principals should possess? What are those internal and external supports or training that's needed? As well as what are the impacts of those internal and external supports and trainings for principals? So the study is based on the conceptual framework that you see here, and it is a combination of Guba Getzel's social system model back in 1930, which is still applicable today, as well as Michael Fullen's leadership change, which is focused on transformational leadership. And so as you see, the principal is in the center, who is influenced not only by their own needs and personal dispositions, but also by the organization. That would be your school district. What are the expected roles and expectations? All of these things play a role with the internal and external supports and the commitment of the principal. And that change, there's 5 change theories, according to Fullen, that is needed to lead such specialized programs or anything innovative in today's day and age. And again, all of these things compacted do guide the principal in decision-making, which does impact the outcomes of such programs. This study is put to look to confirm the needs for program preparation, the internal and external supports, as well as the training that will help these leaders grow quality, sustainable dual language programs. So looking at the significance of this study is that we're looking to find ways to replicate and duplicate positive outcomes, alignment to the program goals, the sustainability of the programs. This will also help district leaders when they need to make decisions of who to put at the helm of those programs, and of course, to possibly inform policy in the future, as well as expand what's already existing out there in research. The brief history that was covered was all the policies and guidelines that brought about dual language immersion programs. We did start with bilingual education. That was the start of it. And then going more into specialized dual language immersion programs, which is an additive program based off of the outcomes of increasing student achievement and allowing students to be both bilingual, biliterate, and also having those global competencies. The chapter 2 also focused on the importance of those program models. There are 2. There is full immersion, where you are fully immersed in Spanish for the first 2 years of school. And then slowly, starting in second grade, you get introduced back into English and then carry about a 50-50 balance all the way through. And then as you get into higher grade levels, again, Spanish is there for foundational and keeping, but you'll see more programs more focused back on the traditional English programming. And then two-way is where you have programs that come together and your population is split. You have native English speakers, and then you have second language learners. And that's usually seen in Title I schools, just because of the popularity of the data that comes back. It shows that second language learners do meet their peers by the time that they have third grade and higher on end of grade assessments or any state or federal assessments. Again, bilingual brain. Research has shown that if you a multilingual learner, that your brain works much better. You increase the comprehension, your decision-making. Studies are out there just pretty much to say that you are a strong thinker. And so we move then into, here are some of the major areas within chapter 2 that was focused on. It is the guiding principles. This is the research that has been done on dual language instructional practices. And there are 7 strands. So anyone who is looking to implement and maintain practices, this is a book that kind of guides that development. Also, there's the need for principal PD. It is different because it is a specialized program. There is second language and different pedagogy that is needed. And so therefore, you need to have in-depth knowledge, and there needs to be a specific ability and capability to maintain both a traditional school environment plus the second language program. Thinking about internal and external supports, the internal supports are any infrastructure that is set by the school or the district, and that could include anything from curriculum materials, classroom libraries, any of those sorts. And of course, the school base is responsible for those resources, the allocation of funds, trainings, of course, hiring of teachers, training of teachers. When you look at external supports, that is anything outside of the school district. That can be a consulting company, some sort of outsource. Again, they usually help with the hiring of the pipeline. Recommendation for such program is the native Spanish speaking. They know how to actually specifically train children on how to read in Spanish, as well as kind of build those foundational skills. And so the leader needs to also understand what challenges come with hiring the international teachers and what questions parents may have placing their children in such programs. And so the leader is really responsible for allocating and securing the funds, but also knowing the needs of the program and being able to meet those needs. When needs are not met, people want to leave, and we want to keep those in the job. Chapter 2 also kind of goes down into the framework. Why was the specific framework chosen? And so I did look at 3 different types of leadership, which was the behavioral leadership, looking at Guba Getzel's leadership model, also Kirk Lewin. Then shifting over to situational leadership, because there is that 2 dimension of leadership. You have the direct and the supportive. So of course, looking at Hershey and Blanchard. And then transformational leadership, you start to see in 2018, Fullen's change model. And so looking at the big picture, went ahead and went with Guba Getzel's leadership model and Fullen's framework, which will also be later described in chapters 4 and 5. So when we think of the research design, this was a mixed method convergent model. And so you can see in the visual what that looks like. So there were 1 instrument, so that principals just needed to go to one place to get the survey, but the survey was divided into 2 pieces. You had a Likert scale survey that was based on the guiding principles DLI toolkit. It is a close-ended instrument. It had Likert scale, which you will see in just a few moments, where they got to look at the frequency of their behaviors and practices for about 40 questions. The qualitative did focus on the alignment to the RQs and the framework, the conceptual framework. And these were 10 open-ended questions. And so again, the outcome of using this mixed method design model was to confirm or disconfirm those leadership behaviors and practices, external, internal support, as well as the professional development that would be needed for leaders to lead these programs effectively. So as you can see in the visual, there were 3 locations. So it was 3 different school districts. There were 13 potential participants, all elementary principals. First thing that needed to be done was to gain permission to access these principals and have them participate in the study. And again, DLL programs is a unique small population, and so went with these 3 school districts. And again, just to cover. These were the major topics that you'll see in those research questions. And again, certain research instruments were used. Most importantly, what I have not covered is that there are 3 potential merging options when you do a convergent mixed method model. And so there is a side-by-side analysis, what they call data transformation, and a joint display table. And so here we are, chapter 4. So now we're going to talk about the results. So what happened since our time together in November? Well, as mentioned, went to the 3 districts and got approval, all 3, for the accessible population. So I had possibly 13 DLI principals. Again, all 3 districts, is important to note, do have an existing external partnership with the same company. And so what that means is that there are internal teacher candidates that come from this company for them to do their selection. So these are native speaking Spanish teachers or Mandarin speaking teachers. Additionally, they do receive some training services from the outside company as well as other program supports. So it's important to note, over to the visual, you see this beautiful snowball happening. So remember that this outsourced partnership, the purpose of telling you that information is that this provides opportunity for principals across North Carolina who work with this partner to collaborate and network. And so with that, this did provide an opportunity and was encouraged for these principals to take the survey as well as share the link with others. And so this is called a snowball effect, and this approach is utilized when given a small sample of a population, which we had. The goal was to try to get more than the 13 dual language immersion principles, so taking the potential 13 and them sharing it out, hoping to get more. But it is important to note that out of the 13, we had 10 responses. So let's talk about the tracking of data. So it was within a Qualtrics online platform. And so when principals received the link and said that they were going to participate in the study, they did receive the first part of the survey was a 40 Likert scale multiple choice, which was 4-point scale. The measurement and goal of this study was to measure the principal's frequency of utilizing those DLI best practices. And so we gave this scale to the principals to say, tell us how frequently you do this practice. The practices do focus on 7 of the strands that you see at the bottom here, starting with assessment accountability, ending with support and resources. Once this survey was done, they went on to the next section, which was the qualitative, which was 10 open-ended questions. As mentioned before, it does follow the framework as well as our research questions, and that principals did do self-reporting response. Knowing that, sometimes it is said that that's not the best part of getting, results from principals, but it was a good way of them being trustworthy and sharing their thoughts. There's nobody to talk to. There was a conflict of doing an interview. Would love to have done an interview to dig deeper. However, they are a small population within one district. They are actually competitors of each other simply because they're trying to recruit the same families and bringing a certain population to the school. Especially if you're a 50-50 model, you are looking that half of your program are second language learners. And so here's the visual again. So although it's one survey, the data was collected and taken apart. So when the data reports came back, it was downloaded as a Word document and also saved for safety as a PDF. So each of these tools, survey instruments, were taken separately and analyzed separately. Then the goal was to bring the 2 together to merge, which will allow for interpretation of results to compare. So when we looked at the quantitative, going back to the Likert scale survey, if you notice, there are 7 bands. However, with the partnership, the external partnership, it was not deemed necessary to do the curriculum, family, and community survey questions. And that's simply because of the fact that they are influenced by the external. When it comes to curriculum selection, the outside source company does come in, gives them the recommendation, and does the training on the curriculum. When it came to family and community, again, the external are bringing in the teachers and helping school-based leaders with the recruitment efforts, communication, and participating in those recruitment activities. So again, for the sake of the survey, we were looking at the behaviors in which the principals controlled and were responsible for. So we only focused on 5 of the 7 strands. In order to have a good idea of the data that was coming back and to analyze, to interpret, to find the strengths, to find frequency and engagement of practices, as well as challenges and areas of improvement, you can see here that there is a chart that was embedded in the appendix of the dissertation itself, which allowed for us to go question by question and find trends and patterns. And so this was done for every 40 questions per strand. And so that visual is there so that you can see exactly how that was decided. So it's important to know when analyzing the quantitative portion of the survey, we looked simply at the strengths and the area of focus. And so you can see we did strand 1, again, looking at strengths, of course, accountability.
Was that Samuel McCullough's mom?
No, it was a friend of ours.
Also, it wasn't even a mom.
Mhm.
So what was
She
she
was
even here for?
She had to pick up, she said she had to pick up some money for the adoption form. This is the last.
Okay. So areas of focus. So as you can see, again, 5 areas were looked at. And in the dissertation itself, we went line by line and sat there to say, here are strengths, here are areas of focus, looked at the frequency, engagement, and it was done in narrative form. And so here again is just some of the information that was gathered. Now from there, we looked at the qualitative report. And again, there was alignment to the 3 RQs. And again, those open-ended questions were purposely designed and placed in there because we wanted to expand and extend the views and experiences of these principals. And again, an alignment to those RQs. So we're looking at behaviors, the practices, the preparation, which again goes with even professional development, the internal and external. And again, principals did self-inform, self-report, give their self-perceptions on the frequencies and behavior practices when leading their DL programs. It's important to note, before they started the survey, they received within the survey instrument kind of this DLI terms and concepts, giving them defined what we meant when we said internal supports. It was, okay, what are those infrastructures or resources that you as the principal have that has been given to you by yourself as the school leader within your means, but at the same time by the district. And so this way it kind of made sure that they understood what those key concepts were, because we were trying to make sure that we captured the appropriate responses for the study. So this visual you see here allowed you to see the very top are the first 3 research questions. But as I started to look at the results, you can see that they were very much overlapping responses, but also the questions kind of tend to overlap. So just to be clear and break it apart, it was showing here are the questions and where really they fell within those RQs. And so this helped then capture when it came time to pull the information that they were categorized correctly. So again, 10 open-ended integrated questions within the survey did and was guided by the framework, conceptual framework. And again, the goal was to confirm or disconfirm those 3 areas: leadership and behavior practices, external, internal supports, as well as the professional development, again, needed by these principles paramount in growing these quality, sustainable DLI programs. So for the findings of the quantitative, this is the qualitative results. You can see here, just sliding it back, the first three that were on the top, and then over to the right, you see those were the other two that had the overlapping. So this is what the theme analysis looked like. So it was looking at those questions and what themes do we see and placing it in this way. So now it comes time, again, two different data sources need to be merged, which means you have to do a triangulation of data. So with the quantitative, we had said originally we were going to, in the beginning, back in November with the proposal, we're going to do a chi-square goodness of fit test. And why we chose this was it measured the principal's frequency of implementation of those 5 strands. And of course, the hypothesis was we were going to find an equal proportion. Unfortunately, with 10 participants, there was not enough data for us to meet the expected value, and therefore it was not feasible to conduct that chi-square test. Again, in order for this measurement to happen, we needed a P, which is the proportion of a 0.05 or less, which meant that there's a 5% chance of the outcome. We're good, there was not left for error. However, since it was not feasible due to the number, we had to then switch to a thematic analysis. So as you might remember in that first few slides at the beginning, we could do a side-by-side comparison, which was done, and then taking both data sources that were analyzed and reported, this led to the joint display table. The reason for this joint display table was simply to show what is the analysis results show when merging these two together, and of course, to effectively show this merge of the attained information. And so here's what it looks like. If you look to your left, this is your quantitative. So again, here are your three, I'm sorry, this is the qualitative on this side, because it's showing your RQs looking at those top 3 topics, which is leadership, behaviors, and practices, the external, internal, and then of course those impacts of that training and support. And again, the overlapping is down at the bottom. Now, when you look over to the right, these are the strands. That was the Likert scale. So going back, rereading those narratives and pulling out those themes. And so when you put a table together like this, it allows for a theme analysis results like this. The common themes, there were 5. And here they are: program planning and implementation, targeted support, your professional development and training, networking opportunities and learning experiences, as well as those resources and support. And so that leads us now to chapter 5, a good discussion. Now that the results are in, now what? So looking at program planning and implementation, well, as we all know, school building leaders do influence change. They are the face of that program and that learning environment. So they have to have that fundamental understanding of what those programs are, what's the benefits of them, the infrastructures, what are those guiding principles. They also are dependent then on their own experiences and dispositions, simply because if there's not training, well, it's left up to them of their skill sets and trying to figure out what is the need of the program, their staff and their students, because they need to meet the needs of those they serve. And lastly is thinking about that support and training for how to sustain, how to continue to monitor and make the necessary changes. When we think of targeted support, you're talking about those ongoing PD opportunities, and specifically for the teachers that you serve. Development and implementation of action plans. As a principal, you need to be able to say what is happening, what needs to be done. I need to allocate human resources, which means there has to be specialized personnel for such a specialized program. What are those available resources? And of course, growing not only internally and building capacity, but even from themselves as the leader of the building, what networking and learning experiences can they have? So in order for them to uphold all of these support systems, they need to be able to have a program model and a program structure that's going to be right and just right fit for their school. They need to have some sort of refinement process as they go through the bumps of implementing a new program. It's not going to be great and wonderful. That takes time. And it also takes opportunities to build capacity to strengthen those practices. And of course, like anything, we have to meet those expected outcomes. When we look at professional development, remember it's that extension of practice. And so as a leader of the building, you again have to build capacity. You have to make sure that program productivity is happening and is increasing over time. And of course, always refining your systems to make sure it's doing it right and you're getting the necessary student outcomes and program outcomes. Thinking about networking and learning opportunities, well, you don't know what you don't know. Sometimes you think it's going well in your building and find that it's happening somewhere better. You want to be able to duplicate and replicate. So leaders need to be able to know how to monitor and evaluate those practices. Continuous improvement needs to occur, as well as any systematic changes. And lastly, of course, communication. And based off of everything you've heard today, hopefully you realize that the leader of the school, especially leading a dual immersion program, has to advocate and be that spokesperson. And any leader knows communication is that foundational pillar. And so again, as the leader, you need to know the ins and outs of the program. You need to know the research behind it. You need to have that building capacity responsibility. So how does this all connect? You want to know? Well, here we go. So the 5 themes that came out of this: the program planning and implementation, the targeted support, professional development and training, networking opportunities and learning experience, and communication. This is what the principal said that they needed. And so when you look at the left side and it shows where it says behavioral, going back to the principal and the organization. As a principal, if you feel unsuccessful leading and you do not have the pedagogy or the experience, and you could be a solid principal but come into a new program, such as a dual language, and be a fish out of water simply because there is a specialized program that's needing specialized training, and at the same time, there are different needs. You are dealing with international teachers, parents who are going against the norm of a traditional classroom environment into something new. So principal needs to feel successful and at the same time being able to meet the needs of others as well as themselves. And if not, principals tend to want to leave. Either they'll leave the program behind and kind of abandon and say it's not working and blame the program for not working, or at the same time as the principal, you may not feel like your needs are being met, so you'll either look to go to a different school or even a different district. So the leave option is there. From an organization, you do have expectations for this program doing well. You've invested the time and energy and money, and so you want to make sure you have the right principal guiding that. And so again, the organization needs to understand that this is what principals are asking when it comes to preparation and support, even though they're guiding the ship right now. These are the ask, wants, and needs. Looking at the other side where you see change, this is Fullen's model. And so for Fullen, these are the things that are needed. There are 5 essential components. So moral purpose, understanding change. Moral purpose has a lot to do with your mission and goal of that school. Understanding change, there's going to be complex times because it's something new. The demands are changing. Again, you're bringing in international teachers, so you have to understand cultural awareness and relevance. Building relationships, knowledge building and sharing. Again, that goes back to relationship building 101, any leader knows, but the knowledge building and sharing is a complex, not the norm program, a kind of specialized program does have different needs. And so as the leader, you need to know what those things are. And then of course, the cohesive making sure that the organization as a whole is moving in the right direction. And so this is how this theoretical framework helped guide this study. So now you know what the data says. So now what after that? Well, a 5-year professional development plan was developed. And so you can see here the pre-planning year. So anyone who is looking to start a program with a principal, you can see that there's a personalized area of focus. And over to the right-hand side, looking at the NC principal evaluation rubric, as well as those guiding principal strands that came from that DLI toolkit, which is where that instrument came from when it came to the Likert scale. So there is alignment, not just to the theoretical framework, but also to these other two components, as well as when you think of program goals, you have to think of biliteracy, being biliterate, and also having this multicultural, kind of like this cultural competencies. So all of that was placed within a professional development plan. The reason for going beyond year 1 or 2 or 3 was simply because when principals were asked about how long did it take for you as a leader of the school to feel like you were competent and well suited for the position, they said minimum 3 years, but more 5 to 7 years. And principals do not usually stay in one program or one school these days more than 3 years, definitely not 5, but for those who are currently in that role, also giving them something to look at. And so for these principals who most likely participated in this survey, went ahead and included them in this 5-year plan, and including things like when it came to family and community, adding a parent advocacy structure. Parents kind of help build your program. It's word of mouth. So any type of partnership. And again, networking experiences, now going beyond your building and looking for job-alike collaboration sessions or anywhere from even conferences. And again, keeping an alignment. So again, no one wants to do something outside of the current role and expectations. Well, as a principal, you are connected to the evaluation rubric. And so it shows how these pieces do align to those certain evaluation pieces within the rubric. From there, as a principal, you always need to do a professional growth plan. So if you're a DLI novice principal, what does that look like? And so it was creating, again, a professional growth plan, naming the activities, what are those attendant outcomes, what are those proposed evidences, and again, alignment to the evaluation rubric, as well as the guiding principles strands, which again, guides principals leading, whether it's just the planning and implementation, or you are at the point where you are constantly revisiting and restructuring. So this is for a novice principal, and then did consider the experience. And so again, some more activities, intended outcomes, of course, proposed evidence, and the alignment. And so, for example, that development of that DLI parent advocacy committee is listed in there. And the whole point of that is to also increase communication among stakeholders. And by showing that, it's the, again, some of those artifacts. So you might have meeting minutes from the newly established parent advocacy committee. And lastly, for those who are selecting the principals leading, there was the development of the recommended list of leadership dispositional behaviors. Here, again, not straying from what principals already expected or districts are expecting principals to follow, is that evaluation tool. So looking at what a strategic leader is, looking at what does full and change themes look like. And so again, betterment and commitment to the improvement of the quality work. And so putting it into the perspective of DLI context leadership. Again, as the leader, if I'm going to be focusing on strategic leadership, well, I need to be deliberate and strategic planning with plans of action to meet my program needs or teacher needs. I do know I need to be knowledgeable about the methodology or pedagogy or even those practices or strategies to help with that second language development. And so then that just leaves with, okay, now we have some plans for those to use, but for those who are looking to research and add to the existing body of literature, what should we focus on? And so one thing would be, we focused on the leaders, but now let's focus on the students. Thinking about DLI programming and those instructional components, looking specifically at that specialized student populations. In North Carolina, we now call them multilingual learners, but in other states, it might be still ELs, English language learners. And here are some possible RQs to share with those who happen to come by this dissertation. Another thing is, we talked about, how do principals prepare? Well, yes, we can have those external. External is also any university or specialized courses that could be offered for principals who are either leading or looking to lead dual language programs. In the state of North Carolina, ECU happens to be one of those universities who are now giving out certificates to say, I understand the pedagogy and all that good information, but wondered what else is out there beyond just that one school here in North Carolina. And lastly, it's just that continued exploration of that administrative dispositions, again, that would benefit the sustainability, but also the implementation of such bilingual education settings. Maybe even going outside and looking differently than dual language immersions, because there's other types of bilingual education. And so again, just providing some few RQs for those who are interested in conducting such studies. And so just to wrap this all up, it's important to remember that the DL principal must adapt, thrive, and respond to those trends and patterns and situations that will typically arise when you have a specialized program. And that the leaders must possess those 5 influential change theories, which comes from that transformational leadership of Fullen. And lastly, DLI program does require specialized leadership practices and behaviors, strong advocacy, and of course, you have to have a commitment to the program, which means you have to have an understanding of the pedagogy, the research and theory behind these foundational infrastructures for leading and growing sustainable DLI programs. That is all I have.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. All right, this time I will, let me see. Let me stop the share. Get everybody back on the screen. Let's see. There we are. All right, so at this time, I will open up the floor for any questions that anybody has. I have one, but I'll go last. So I'll start with Dr. Revis. You have anything that you'd like to ask Dr. Revis? Dr. Revis, I may have muted you, or you may have muted yourself. I don't know if we can hear you. Let me see. Can anybody else unmute and see if we got any volume here on our end?
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear Jill. All right, so she's gonna hold on 1 second. She's got to see if she can turn hers on. While we're waiting on Dr. Revis, Dr. Payne, you have any questions that you'd like to ask?
I don't really have questions. I was going to say, great job, Vera. I think you did a wonderful job. I'm impressed with how thorough your presentation was and how thorough your research was. So good job to that. I may have some more, but I'm still looking.
Okay. We have anything from Dr. Revis yet? We'll move on. Anybody else? Any other questions? Okay, so I have one, and Vera and I talked about this yesterday. What I really want to know is going back to Guba cells that said what the principal needs and wants to do has to be what the district needs and wants for them to do. And if you're not going to be successful. So my question is, back to the theoretical framework. According to Getzels and Guba, what they're telling us is that if you're not trained, you're not going to be successful. Is that what you found in your study?
Absolutely. And so again, you are the face and advocate of your program. And so you need to know the ins and outs. There is pedagogy. When you hire international teachers, they know how to teach the curriculum from their perspective in Spanish. And so being Americanized, I have even found myself realizing that there is a certain protocol process to do. And a lot of our teachers think, well, this is how we teach our traditional American kids. And it's, well, yes, but when you're teaching a second language, there are different and better approaches. And so we kind of need to know that. And that's where that specialized training has come. So even as a former principal of dual immersion, I have learned more coming out and serving in district roles, and even as the external support to say, no, there's certain pedagogy and strategies, best practices that we think we know, and we're not doing the program justice. And can sit there to say that even with working with some of the best principals, when they felt unsuccessful, they did abandon the program, and we did watch one specifically leave this year, the program, after 3 years, just not being able to feel that they could support their teachers. Their teachers felt not supported simply because of the fact they didn't have the best practices. That particular person had already missed over a year of professional development and always felt like playing catch up. Hence the reason for this dissertation, and can even say, now that I've looked at Fullen and Guba Getzel, I see things and had my own aha moments based off of conducting this study and receiving the information from principals.
So no matter if I'm, gotta be careful not to compliment myself here. I was just a fair to middling principal, but let's say we had a great principal of a traditional school. Will they catch on just on their own?
No, we found, and I will not name the district, but I do have a support person here, Dr. Mansouri, who we saw a very phenomenal principal over next to Chapel Hill area, extremely, extremely brilliant, wonderful at his craft, sat there, and thankfully he had the external partnership and said, I'm not feeling successful, I need the support. And we were able to sit down and do exactly utilizing that DLI toolkit of what exactly did his specialized training need to be. And so we were lucky that he did not leave and that he was able to maintain, but he left to start a new school, and we'll start another program within the next year or two.
So thinking at the central office level, one of your, at the end there, you had recommendations for those selecting principals. Would you recommend that they hire a first-time new principal or a experienced principal, let's say 5 years of experience? What does your study say to that, or does it speak to that?
So you have to know and understand. So if you would have to get in front of that principal in that pre-planning stage is what the recommendation in the study, my findings was that you have to teach that pedagogy. And so the 5-year development plan was put kind of in place too,
Right.
Thinking of that person, simply because how do you catch somebody up on that pedagogy? You need to know the design models. You need to understand the cultural relevance that you're going to experience. So based off of experience, I wouldn't say I would put a brand new principal, because there's nuances of just the principalship in itself. You're compacting it by putting somebody else and say, not only do you need to understand all that goes from a principal's perspective, but now let me hit you with a few more elements. It could be overwhelming, and that principal may not feel successful and may want to leave, or vice versa. The district may say, you're not really meeting the needs because we gave you what we thought was good PD, but you need time.
You gotta have both sides. That's what Getzel says is, if the organization, if you're not meeting their needs, then the partnership is not successful. So the principal needs their needs met, but the organization needs theirs too. And your recommendation is that they not hire first-time principals in DLI. All right. So in the course of your research, what are you finding that districts are doing? Are they hiring first-time principals as DLI, or are they going with experienced principals? What is happening in the field?
So based off of the data that we got back from principals have sat there to say the experience needs to be there for 3 to 5
Mhm.
years. And these are the experienced principals. You do have some new programs, but again, based off of the connections with those 3 districts, they have not placed brand new principals. I think that was at one time a thought and philosophy.
It was.
But the more research that I know, I'm not the only researcher focused on this, it has come back of it's
So that-
specialized training is needed. And again, first time principals
Don't
may
do
not
it.
be ready for it.
Yeah, don't do it. That's one of the recommendations out of your study is don't do it. Put them through this PD plan and don't start with beginners. Okay, that's excellent for practice. That's this is action research for those of you, and you need to have an action plan, action steps coming out of it, and I commend you for that. It's great. Absolutely.
The recommended leadership dispositions, also the purpose of building that was that when they made the selections, they could see what the expectation was
Right.
related to the DLI context besides the framework from Fullen. So that this way they can see both ends of, what type of principal, so that this way they could see, could it be too much for a brand new first year principal or even a second year principal? So
Right.
the dispositions are there to say, hey, this is an alignment for what you're going to rate and evaluate your principals on, but take a look at all these other complex pieces besides what you have within your rubric. This is alignment to it within the context of DL.
Well, you and I haven't even discussed this. The work that you have done is an extension of 27, 8 years ago in North Carolina, when we moved away from principal tenure to principal contracts. And the thought was, is we can take an experienced, successful principal and we can put them at low performing schools and they'll do fine without any training. And we found out that completely different set of expectations, norms, skills, and abilities. This is 25 years later, tells us the same thing that we found when we thought we could put people, because they were successful here, they'll be successful there. We don't need to train them. We just need to hire them, and pay them a little more, and we'll send them over here to these schools. And this, again, goes back to the Get Sales Guba model, or Guba Get Sales, whichever you prefer, that says that won't work. It won't work in DLI. It didn't work in at-risk schools either. And that's our theoretical basis is there's a reason why it's a theory. It holds true always. It never just works every now and then. And so your study from that theoretical basis confirms that theory that there's a reason why it's been around for nearly 100 years. And that's very important when you do doctoral work is that you work from that theoretical basis. It may be the most important. Being a methodologist, I'd like to say my part's the most important, but it's not really. The theoretical is the most important. Dr. Revis, were you able to get volume? No, we don't have anything. Okay.
Dr. Lamb, she posted in a thing that her volume's not working, but she had no questions and said,
All right.
nice job, Vera.
Thank you. All right, at this time, we're going to go to committee deliberations. Let me see how I can do this. If y'all want to stick around, what I normally do, unfortunately. So Vera, if you will, let me see if I can get to. Click escape to exit. Close that. There we go. Had to get out of that. Okay.
Forget to click Jeff. You don't want him hanging out with you guys.
Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. You can go to my office there, so.
Okay.
All right, we got one more that's got to, we could. There we go. There we go. All right, can y'all hear me? Well, what do you
Sir,
think?
I think she did a good job. The only thing, a really good job. The only question I had, and I just haven't seen the final doc, was she had some citations in the draft that was sent to me that she didn't have the full citation there.
She's got, she's
Um,
got, the editor.
And as long as she's fixed that, yeah.
Yeah, she fixed it. We had to go back to the editor to do that. We had to work on those. So, yeah. Yeah, we went back for additional editing, actually twice, to fix all those citations and references.
Okay.
That has to be, that's on me to get that done. And yeah, that was an ordeal, by the way. That was about 2 days' work, more than that for her and about that much for me. We actually had to go in and remove her references and work on them separately and then put them back in the document for the editor.
Mm.
And so, yeah, quite an ordeal. So all that, here it is right here. All of it's done. She's going to bring it for you to sign it, Jill. I forwarded your signature.
Okay.
To Kathy. So that we'll get that done and we can get moving here. Obviously she's not graduating tonight. I hate that. So she'll graduate in August and we will, but we got several things to do on the paperwork and all that stuff. We'll take care of that today. So what do you think about her study?
I have Dr. Revis on the phone with us so that she can talk too.
I apologize, guys. I do not know what's happened.
Hold on 1 second, Dr. Revis. Let me.
Yeah,
Okay,
I
I've
can
got
hear you now. I can hear you now. I could have got my phone. I left it in the office because it rings constantly. What'd you think of her study?
Personally, I thought it was a very timely study, one that was much needed.
Well, I'm afraid we're going the wrong direction on language programs. We're going in the direction of, we don't want them, they're politically dangerous and we're just putting kids in them now. We're just beginners because they want a job. Experienced people don't want anything to do with them because of the politics. You notice we didn't have anybody from the western end of the state to participate because they don't want to. It's too politically, we only had the Piedmont and the coastal plains because there's a reason why. And so we know that we shouldn't put beginners in this, but we're doing it anyway because of the politics behind it. And this is timely, to Kathy's point, this is timely in that we need to remind districts and decision makers, you can't put a bunch of kids in here and expect it to come. Yeah, if you want to fail, but if you actually want, if you actually want it to work, And again, that's not always clear that they want it to work. If you want it to work, then you got to put some decent people in it. They're not just going to catch on. But now, I'm wondering if maybe some folks want it to fail, or, want to close the problem but be successful with some of the people they're choosing to put in these.
Well, as a school board member in my school district, I have been pushing our school system to expand their DLI programs. We have one, and we have a large population of English language learners, and I can get no momentum going.
That's what I mean. It's this notion of let's go back. Things were better back then, let's go back. And so this study reinforces the need for the programs and to put decent people in them.
And I would say that in our district where Vera's at, we're doing some things for our EL learners. But as far as putting the right people there, there's not many people to choose from.
Yeah.
So it's not even that I've got to
people.
pull an experience. There's no people to choose
Right.
from.
The experienced people don't want to have to do the training and the learning, learning basically another job. Or they're afraid of the political fallout. Exactly. They're not lining up to do this. It's the right thing to do. And if we're going to kind of get over the hump here, we need to do it, but we just don't, we don't have the political will. And you say we don't have a lot of good candidates for, for any schools, but especially for these. So so the reason why I'm talking about this is we're going to do an article here shortly, and Vera's going to do one. I may do one that's pretty ugly, and that will set the place on fire. But I won't put Vera's name on it, or yours. But I'm not happy that we're trying to drag ourselves back to the 1950s. I was alive in the 50s. I wasn't real old, but I don't remember it being a picnic myself. But maybe I was wrong. All right, so let me do this right quick. All right, so what's our vote here? Everybody's a thumbs up.
I think approve.
All right, let me start bringing everybody back then. All right. I have to put my glasses back on. Okay. Okay, I admitted everybody that I put in the waiting room, everybody in the breakout room. All right, let me go get Vera. Oh. Ready? I'm back. All right, I want to be the first to congratulate Dr. Vera Woolard on a very successful dissertation defense today. Everybody.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to open up the floor. You can unmute yourselves if you have comments. We'll start with the committee. Dr. Payne or Dr. Revis, any comments that you'd like to make?
Dr. Payne, am I still on your phone?
You are, yes, ma'am.
Okay. Vera, I just want to say how impressed I was with your analysis and how you aligned everything to your theoretical framework, your research questions, and the way you merged it all together. That was done very well.
Thank you.
And I'll add, I love the way that you presented the need and gave a very clear picture of what needed to happen moving forward in order for us to meet the needs of our EL learners and through our EL programs.
Anybody else like to say something to Vera?
I would just like to say that we are so super proud of you, Vera. Congratulations.
It's good to see her cohort members here, and we're expecting you soon. I'm speaking, Dr. Laws is on vacation this week and not here, so I'm his second in command this week. So I'm remind all of you, we want to see you in this room here very soon. So let's get after it.
I'd like to wish Vera a happy birthday today.
Thank
It is
you.
Vera's birthday today.
Great way to
Mom
celebrate.
reminded us. Yeah, it is. Well,
What a-
we had to move heaven and earth to do this. Or she did. I did. I just supposed to show up at lunch and eat lunch. But to get it on her birthday today, she was so excited about that. So we're very pleased. Happy birthday, Mr. Woolard. Are you where you could buzz in and say something to your wife?
Yep, I am here. I want to congratulate my wife. I know all the time and effort she's put into this, and you can see it in her results in her dissertation. So proud of you. Wish you a happy birthday. And I want to thank you also, Dr. Lamb, let you know how much we appreciate you, your guidance, support, and mentorship. I know Vera thinks the world of you. So thank you all, and love you, Vera.
Love you. Thank you.
That's great. That's great. All right, I'm gonna wrap up now. We say, look at us, Vera. We're only 5 minutes late. For me and you, that's great. How long we been together now, Vera?
A long
time.
2012 or 2013.
Yeah, we've been in this program since 2013, and then how long we were together in CMS before that? So this is our 15th year, I believe, together. God, the only person that's been with me that long is my wife of 40 years. So Vera's number 2, but she's number 1 in our heart. But the point of that is Vera's been a tremendous student. She's been a colleague, a friend, all those things. I couldn't be prouder. You know that. I couldn't be prouder of you. But what I'm most proud of is that she has stuck with us this long because of the quality person that she is. She's made a commitment to this university and to this university community and the beliefs of this university. That's been her faith has been very strong through all of this, and that's what will carry you through. And that's my message to those of you on the screen who are yet to defend. It's your faith that'll carry you through, folks. That's what'll do it. Prayer helps, does me. I could sure use some churching up, but I pray every day. Try my best to. And so I want to thank you all again for joining us today. On behalf of Vera and as I always conclude, and thank you for choosing Gardner-Webb University. Everybody have a good day. Thank you.